A very good evening, Eswatini. You're watching Eswatini TV News Bulletin 8, read to you by myself, Notile Sitole. Up first, here's a look at tonight's headlines. Their Majesties have congratulated the newly appointed Director General of the World Trade Organization. The Minister of Tourism and Environmental Affairs has praised the Manzini City Council together with AMZ Recycling Center for creating employment through the recycling of waste materials. The End Malaria Fund has collected over 10 million emalangeni since the fund was launched in 2019. And now our bulletin in detail. On behalf of His Majesty King Mswati III, Her Majesty the Queen Mother, the government and the people of Eswatini, the acting Prime Minister Themba Masuku has congratulated the newly appointed Director General of the World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, on her appointment as the first woman and first African to be Director General of the World Trade Organization on the 15th of February 2021. The acting Prime Minister says it is Eswatini's hope and prayer that the cooperation that happily exists between the Kingdom of Eswatini and the organization will continue to soar in the coming years. He says Eswatini is delighted particularly because the appointment came at a time when Africa is in the process of operationalizing the African Continental Free Trade Area, and the country is grateful that with her immense knowledge and expertise, Eswatini and the continent at large will benefit from her guidance. The Minister of Tourism and Environmental Affairs, Moses Vilakazi, has praised the Manzini City Council together with AMZ Recycling Center for ensuring that Emaswati are employed through recycling of waste materials, an initiative which also keeps the country clean. Vilakazi said this when touring Manzini Recycling Buyback Center.
The Recycling Waste Center project was started by Manzini City Council together with AMZ Recycling Center. The aim is to ensure that the country is clean at all times and without waste materials, as well as ensuring that Emaswati are able to generate income through the selling of waste materials in order to earn a living. The waste materials are compressed by AMZ Center before being exported to the Republic of South Africa and in Mozambique, where they are being sold to various companies. Minister of Tourism and Environmental Affairs Moses Vilakazi has praised the Manzini City Council and AMZ for coming up with this initiative, which will not only make income for Emaswati but also to keep the country clean.
Sihlangene lapha namhlanje utowudumisa nekutowucelela laba labala kokuthi abanze nalomsebenzi labawendawo. Mntane Nkosi, indzaba yetibi labanye bayithatha ngekuthi into lelahlwako, kepha lokuhlangana kwamasipala la ahlangane nalaba baka MZK ngilapho ukukhombisa khona ukuthi itibi idingaba imali.
Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Princess Melanie, says this project is in line with Sustainable Goal number 11, which makes cities inclusive, safe, resilient and sustainable. Therefore, this project must also be conducted in all the cities and towns around the country.
Sisinazi ke sitowudumisa silitiko sitowukhutsata ukuthi awu nembala bekunene kuhle sibili lokhu vele kuqhubeleni emadolobheni onke.
Manzini Mayor Jabu Shiba says this project will help the city to be waste-free and clean, which will then help in attracting investors and tourists to visit the city of Manzini without facing difficulties.
Siyabonga lokuthi iqale ngalesikhathi la sibhekene nale mbedumehlwane khona ye-COVID, wonke umuntu noma labaningi baphelelwe imisebenzi. So nakuvele amathuba lanjena as a city siyajabula kakhulu.
The waste materials include bottles, cardboards, metals and other waste materials. More than 37 Emaswati are now employed by AMZ Recycling Center. Reporting for Eswatini TV News, Zoto Antlameni with Mbonga Dube, Manzini.
The Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, Thulani Mkhaliphi, says the payment of allowances for first-year students will be delayed. This is contained in a statement that was issued by the Ministry of Labour and Social Security on Thursday.
The Principal Secretary says affected students are first years from the following tertiary institutions: UNESWA, LUCT, SANU, William Pitcher, ECOT, Eswatini Christian Medical University, Good Shepherd Nursing College, Ngwane Teachers College, and Kwamile Voktim. He says the delay has been caused by COVID-19 work-related stoppages in the Student Study Loans Processing Office. He says between October 2020 and January 2021, a number of their officers have not only been affected but also infected by the pandemic. And in accordance with the national guidelines on infection prevention and control of COVID-19, officers have had to be isolated for treatment, care, and observation. And the offices have had to be closed down for fumigation for 5 instances. The Principal Secretary says signing of study loans agreements and capturing of students' information into the computer system was therefore affected, and the process is behind by at least 2 weeks. He says they are still operating with minimum staff, as some members of staff are still at home recovering and others coming at intervals to observe appropriate COVID-19 safety standards. Mkhalipi says students and parents are therefore requested to exercise patience and be assured that payment of student assistance allowances will be made not later than the 31st of March 2021. Reporting, I'm Nolile Makakula in Babane.
The End Malaria Fund has collected funds amounting to 10 million emalangeni since its establishment in 2019, and it has supported the development of the National Malaria Program with the procurement of drugs and repairing of trucks. This was disclosed by the Chief Executive Officer of the fund, Stephen Mtetwa, in a meeting with the media on the progress of the fund.
The End Malaria Fund was established in 2019, and its objective is to eliminate malaria by 2023. Eswatini has reduced malaria by 92%, and it is on track to be the first African country to make malaria history, even though there's COVID-19. Chief Executive Officer Stephen Mtetwa says the fund supports the development of the National Malaria Program.
By 2020, we basically so the contracts elapsed for IRS staff. So as a result, the IRS program hadn't been completed at the time, so it was very important for it to actually complete. So what we decided to do is fund the staffing for that. But this is a request that came from the program that we deemed fit, was viable to be funded. We also went into making sure that the vehicles for doing this activity, IRS, are up, repaired, serviced, and we made sure that they are ready for implementation of IRS. And as may be reported recently in the newspapers, that the country has seen shortages or stockouts of drugs at facility levels or at central medical stores. This is a request that came into the End Malaria Fund, and as such, we've addressed that shortfall, where we have now ordered some of the medication that has actually stocked out from CMS. So those are some of the activities that we do. We look at how important is the resources or the funds that we resource mobilize get to the Liswati down that needs to be receiving it, whether it's through medication, whether it's through the intervention itself, because that's what it was created for.
Mtetwa says malaria is still one of the deadly diseases. Therefore, it's important that Eswatini continue to be sensitized on malaria until the country reaches zero infection for tourism purposes and the stability of the economy. He says the fund is looking into investment options to make interest to avoid full dependence on donors. Reporting, I'm Lungelile Makakula with Muzim Konda in Babane.
The Eswatini Energy Regulatory Authority has met all stakeholders in the petroleum industry. The authority's Chief Executive Officer Vusmuzim Kumane says the meeting was important as stakeholders were given clarity about the scope of the Eswatini National Petroleum Company.
The meeting between Eswatini Energy Regulatory Authority and petroleum industry stakeholders was held virtually. During an interview with the authority's Chief Executive Officer, Vusmuzim Kumane says participants' views about Eswatini National Petroleum Company were also considered. Kumane says the Eswatini National Petroleum Company will help in making sure that petrol and diesel are found even in rural areas.
liquefied petroleum gas, LPG, all those as part of the energy portfolio. One of the issues that came up was the role to be played by the Eswatini National Petroleum Company, which basically is to play the role of a strategic fuel reserve, and at the same time address unserviced areas like the rural areas, which do not normally have filling stations, and they have to travel some kilometers to be able to get service.
When refilling a litre of fuel in a garage, 35 cents of the amount will go to Eswatini National Petroleum Company. This money, among other things, will be used to run the company and also empower Eswatini business people about the petroleum industry. For Eswatini TV News, Fortune Dlangamandla, Babane.
In an effort to assist small and medium enterprise development during the post-COVID-19 recovery strategy, the Small and Medium Enterprise in the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Trade, in collaboration with MTN Eswatini, held a virtual meeting which was mainly aimed at helping SMEs on how to continue running their businesses during the COVID-19 period.
The Small Enterprise Initiative was started in 2018 by the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Trade, Eswatini MTN, PVN Investment and other business partners with the aim of helping SMEs on how to run their businesses in order for the sector to develop. Director of Small Medium Enterprises in the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Trade, Mluleki Dlamini says, during the virtual meeting held on Thursday this week, more than 90 SMEs participated.
We discussed issues around how can businesses thrive during the COVID and post-COVID. We did deliberate on the issues in terms of the scheme that has recently been launched, which is housed at Eswatini Bank to the amount of 45 million, and we did highlight what are the conditions that are needed for each business to benefit. We also touched on the issues of the Small Scale Enterprise Loan Guarantee Scheme that is housed at the Central Bank of Eswatini, and we also discussed the scheme which basically focus on youth development and their businesses.
MTN Head of Enterprise Business, Thandazile Dlamini says programs to assist small and medium enterprises during this post-COVID-19 development are already in place to address pertinent issues to arm them with business strategies.
You know, the packages that we put together for SME communication and solutions that help SMEs to function easily. Payment solutions like Momo Pay that allows our customers to receive money from their customers. Some of the initiatives that we have put through during this COVID time is to ensure that, you know, we zero rate the fees for mobile money transactions for businesses.
Dlamini further advised SMEs to contact them using toll-free line 7808-1001 whenever they need assistance or clarifications. Reporting for Eswatini TV News, Zodwa Dlamini with Mbonga Dube, Babane.
The Ministry of Education will join forces with the Ministry of Health and the Deputy Prime Minister's Office to help counsel children that have lost their parents due to COVID-19 in preparation for the opening of schools. According to the Director of Career Guidance, Lindiwe Dlamini, this will help children excel in their schoolwork.
Following the unfortunate event of some children losing parents due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Director of Career Guidance and Counseling, Lindiwe Dlamini, says they have been working with the Ministry of Health in implementing services of youth teenage clubs and local clinics where children would get counseling from health workers on psychological and mental issues with regards to dealing with their loss.
In the clinics, there are teen clubs where they can come and they can be provided with services, and the nurses and the peer educators can actually take them through on the issues that they are grappling with. And we also have the social welfare officers who are allowed, who can visit their homes and also provide the counseling.
Dlamini also mentioned that the head teachers of schools, together with teachers, will get appropriate training on how to counsel children and to better attend to their mental health needs so that they excel in their studies.
We are going to have a program for training teachers on psychosocial support, more especially guidance teachers, so that they can offer here and now counseling in the school environment. And on our pipeline, we have also planned to also involve the administrators because they are the gatekeepers.
The Ministry of Education also highlighted that it has partnered with organizations such as SAFAID and Family Life Association, where children will be able to communicate with mental health counselors through the use of social media platforms. The country has recorded a total of 649 COVID-19 deaths and 16,897 cases of people who have tested positive for COVID-19. Reporting for Eswatini TV, Nomalungelo Jele with Muzi Mkhonda in Mbabane.
The national budget, which is expected to be tabled in Parliament on Friday by the Minister of Finance, Neil Rickenberg, is expected to give the Ministry of Health, Education and Public Works and Transport lion's share. This was said by economist Thembinkosi Dube when giving an outlook of what we should expect from the budget.
On Friday, all eyes will be on the Minister of Finance, Neil Rickenberg, who is expected to deliver the national budget for the financial year 2021-2022. Eswatini economist Thembinkosi Dube gives a perspective on what will influence the allocation of funds for ministries during the 2021-2022 financial year.
The first issue will be the element of education. Education has been grossly affected by the issue of the COVID, the pandemic, such that kids were at home for a long time. So government has to fast track the kids now. That's the first thing, and then they have to provide some other means of learning, like the media. They're using the radio and the television, and then look at ways of how to enhance and to sustain the education system should we have a phase 3 or should the situation continue. So looking into maybe government providing a free internet in the rural areas. This can be internet that can only allow someone to access educational material. But the question will be the gadget. But that's another thing that government will have to work on. We're also expecting a rise in the provision for the health sector, more especially with the pandemic. We've seen teachers were recruited, nurses were recruited to boost the health professionals. So that will affect the wage bill. And we're also expecting the purchase of the vaccine, which will cost government some money. So we expect government to have a larger share on the education, on the health sector. The other sector, whilst we are in the period of the pandemic, there was also these floods that destroyed roads and what infrastructure. Let me just say, people lost homes and roads were destroyed, bridges were washed away, and all those things. So we expect government to enhance that sector by providing more money to fix those problems that we see around.
Last year, Minister Rickenberg tabled an increased 24.1 billion emalangeni national budget allocation for the 2020-2021 financial year, with the Minister of Education and Training getting a lion's share of about 3.2 billion emalangeni. For Eswatini TV News, Fortune Dlangamandla, Mbabane.
Eswatini Liquor Association Secretary General Thamsanqa Hladrago says the Minister of Finance, Neil Rickenberg, is expected to hike sin taxes during his national budget speech, which he will deliver in Parliament on Friday. Hladrago says the increase will be influenced by the fact that South African Minister of Finance, Tito Mboweni, announced a hike on sin taxes on Wednesday during his budget speech.
Eswatini Liquor Association Secretary General Thamsanqa Hladrago says the hike in alcohol and tobacco taxes that is expected to be announced by the Minister of Finance, Neil Rickenberg, on Friday during his budget speech is no surprise. Hladrago says this is because every time South Africa increases alcohol and tobacco taxes, Eswatini follows suit.
The the truth of the matter is that it's not abnormal, it's normal. It's an annual thing that always happens when the budget is going to take place. They always have an increase of the SIM tax. However, this is based on the issue that it is the highest income earner for government. They might give other reasons like it's for curbing alcohol use, or it's because it's not a basic commodity. The truth of the matter is that it's the best income earner for majority of government. So it is not normal. Even us here at home, the same would apply. It's expected. The only different thing that for us, normally the local production of beer will not be affected like the other production of beer that comes from outside, and the hot stuff and wines and ciders that will be imported. Every year we are always complaining that our customers are made to pay more because we are the highest tax commodity.
Hlatshago says the liquor sector will welcome the alcohol and tobacco tax hike as the sector was greatly affected by COVID-19 outbreak. However, Hlatshago mentioned that the hike will not do much better for the sector as it is already on its knees. For Eswatini TV News, Fortune Dlangamandla, Babane.
The Federation of the Disabled in Eswatini, FODSWA, has welcomed the High Court ruling that hit-and-run road accident victims are allowed to claim compensation for general damages. The President, Sipho Dlamini, says they look forward to the implementation of the judgment and hope it will bring relief for many persons with disabilities.
On 19 February 2021, the High Court struck down Section 11B of the Motor Vehicle Accident Act of 2011, which forbids claims for general damages by victims of hit-and-run accidents. This provision affected hit-and-run accident victims and discriminated them from making claims for general damages like other victims who identified the accident-causing vehicles. An example of a victim is a third-year student at UNESWA who was doing a Bachelor of Science degree in Animal Sciences who was hit by a motor vehicle whilst walking to his home in the company of a friend in 2013. The accident left him unconscious and he was unable to identify the vehicle which knocked him. His academic performance was hampered and failed his studies and lost his scholarship. He then filed a claim to the Motor Vehicle Accident Fund for compensation in order to pay his tuition fees. However, MVA refused the claim. He then brought the application before the High Court. The president of FODSWA says he welcomes and appreciates the court's approach as it complies with Eswatini's regional and international human rights obligations. The organization therefore encourages government to closely consult with all stakeholders, especially persons with disabilities, to ensure that laws do not leave anyone behind. Reporting, I'm Lungile Makakula in Babane.
A very good evening once again. You're still watching Eswatini TV. Now we'll have a look at our sports news. South African CAF president candidate Dr. Patrice Motsepe says if he wins the CAF presidency, he will work tirelessly to try and improve the standard of football on the continent to be the best in the world. Motsepe says he will need the assistance of Football Association presidents for African countries to be able to achieve that.
The Sundowns president, Dr. Patrice Motsepe, who is running as candidate for the seat of the CAF president, held a press conference in the Republic of South Africa where he was releasing CAF 10 points action plan in a conference that was broadcasted online. During his remarks, Dr. Motsepe highlighted that if he wins the election, he is looking to improve the football game on the African continent to be the best in the world. Motsepe says in order to achieve that, he will require the assistance of the African Football Association's president to achieve the big dream.
I believe in the policies that we should use sports to unite, to create jobs, to create a better future. And also, under no circumstances will my presidency be used to disrespect, to undermine, to embarrass any country, whether it's Morocco or any other country. And as I said, I need to correct this because it's misinformation. In fact, the opposite is true. I am going to work hard to use football to unite all of our people on the continent. So if I'm honored and privileged to be elected president of CAF, 95% of our discussions will be about football. Because I love football. We love football. I don't think there's anybody in Africa who's lost more money in football than I have. And that's why I'm saying 95% of what we're going to talk about is about football. And African football must become the best in the world, will become the best in the world. It's not going to happen overnight. Nothing that's worth it happens overnight. But the test of what we are going to do over the next few years.
Other issues raised by Dr. Motsepe during his CAF 10 Points Action Plan include the improvement of creating job opportunities through football, issues of television rights, training referees where the visual assistance referee VAR will be required, developing women football, moving the AFCON tournament from 4 years to 2 years. It was also highlighted that the African continent does stand a chance to once again host the World Cup in the year of 2030. The actual elections for the hot seat of the CAF president will be held on the 12th of March this year in Rabat, Morocco. For Eswatini TV Sports, Fabrice Msonera, Mbabane.
Eswatini Chess President Dumsani Msibi says, as an association, they are still in line with their mandate of ensuring that their sport is included among subjects being taught into schools, mostly primary schools. Msibi says they will begin discussions with the Ministry of Education to see if it could be implemented from this year. Msibi was speaking to Eswatini TV Sports in Mbabane.
That their biggest wish is to see chess as a sport being involved in subjects being taught into schools, mostly from primary schools levels.
The program is very important, especially because
the Federation's president, Dumsani Msibi, says they are currently at work to try to see that happening, probably from the beginning of this year's academy. Msibi says this is one way to try and develop and improve the sport at early age.
So, simenge mumo nje kusina kuvulwa tikolo ema-sports avulelwa ne-program lena sidayiqala is a pilot program.
The Ministry of Education says it remains in their mandate to see education working hand in hand with sports. This plays a high role in assisting a child to grow in both ways of life. For Eswatini TV Sports, Fabrice Msonera, Mbabane.
That's all for now. Before we conclude, let's have a relook at tonight's headlines. Their Majesties have congratulated the newly appointed Director General of the World Trade Organization. The Minister of Tourism and Environmental Affairs has praised the Manzini City Council together with AMZ Recycling Center for creating employment through the recycling of waste materials. The End Malaria Fund has collected over 10 million emalangeni since the fund was launched in 2019. That brings us to the end of our bulletin for the evening. Up next is the weather update from myself and the team here at Eswatini TV. Thank you for watching. Good night.